proceed we'll proceed into the next agenda. Probably announcements, but I don't think there's anything specific to announce. So with that, perhaps we can ask Anne to go to agenda item number 3 and to give us an update on the NCFP scholarship.
Sorry, Jeremy, the sound is not very clear. But I'll try to talk as loud as I can, but we can't really hear properly from here.
We can hear you well.
Yeah. So, okay, so the UNSW CNT, so the UNSW CNT PhD scholarship. Okay, the scholarship that we had. So basically, UNSW had this special program where they they have this CNT PhD program, PhD scholarship program, which provides students with fully paid tuition fee as well as a $40,000 Australian dollar stipend or spending money per year for 4 years, including $10,000 money for career development. So each year, the CNTS student will get approximately $50,000, and that's for 4 years. So the process is competitive, and the supervisors, we had to write a project proposal, and that had to be scored and ranked for it to be nominated. Matthew, myself, and Azar wrote a proposal based on the Treat Asia adult and pediatric cohort, and our project was nominated. After that, we then opened up our application to basically everyone around the world. I'm not sure how UNSW advertised this PhD CNT scholarship. However, we had about 55 applicants, and about 50 of those were from Africa. Now, so we had to nominate two top potential students that could potentially undertake this PhD. Azar had nominated a statistician from Ethiopia, and if he does get through this PhD, he will be working on the pediatric cohort. I have nominated Win, who is a clinical trial physician working in HIPNAT, and he'll be working on Tahort if he is successful. So after the application closed, we worked together on the PhD proposal, and that had already been submitted, and we're in the process of waiting to find out the results, and that will come out in November.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on this CNCO PhD scholarship program? So there's a total of 2 nominations for how many spots? I didn't quite catch it.
Okay, sorry. So out of the entire scheme in the university, they're giving away 125 scholarships, and I think what I heard is that there are about 500 applicants. Mm-hmm. So it's about a 1 in 5 success rate.
Okay.
So we could be lucky that both of our students, Azar's nomination and my nomination, are accepted. So we could potentially have 2 CNT PhD students working on the Treat Asia cohort.
Yeah.
We may be unlucky, we may get none. So that depends on how everything goes. But it's very competitive. So they're basically being ranked against other applicants who may have worked in the research field for a very long time with 10 or 20 publications. So it all depends on the scoring system. So we don't know what's going to happen.
And you said we find out in November, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And then the funding support is for how many year period?
4 years.
for 4 years.
Yeah, so the student will get 40,000 stipend, which is 40,000 salary, Australian dollars per year, and they get, in addition to that, each year they get another 10,000 to be spent on career development, like going on conferences or anything they want to do. You know, they might want to take a special course or something. So that's another 10,000, but that's not sort of like a salary. So the actual salary is 40,000, which is a lot, because the usual the usual RTP or international PhD student scholarship is about 28,000 per year. So this CNTA is very there's a high amount of money there.
Okay, so thanks for the updates, and we look forward to hearing the outcomes of the nominations in November. I mean, the prospect of having two people working on either TAPOD or TAPOD is obviously very good for us, and we're also particularly pleased to hear that who's been working with us for a little bit through HivNet is also one of the nominees. So thanks for the update. Yeah. If there are any other questions from any members of the steering committee, please feel free to ask either now or in follow-up emails if that's what you prefer. Assuming there are no questions, perhaps we could move on to the next item in the agenda.
That's good. Okay. So the next agenda is about the TASCOM and TAHOD co-chair nominations. So thank you for all the nominations that you provide to us. So now I'm reaching out to those nominees and gonna confirm with them if they would like to or would be interested to accept the nomination and will take up the position if they are elected. So hopefully I will have a final list of all the candidates for you next week, and then I will send the email to ask for your vote. Okay, and the result of the elections this year will be announced via the email before the meeting and also at the meeting.
Okay. Any questions around TASCOM or TAHOD co-chair nominations? All right. So we'll move on to the next item, which is an update on the TAHOD annual network meeting. So really, I just wanted to. We've been working on a draft agenda for the meeting, and we meaning Treat Asia and the Kirby. So at this stage, I just wanted to share this agenda with you and maybe run through it, fairly quickly, and give you guys the opportunity to make any suggestions or ask any clarification questions around the agenda. So if you remember, the TAHOD annual network meeting is scheduled for Thursday, the 25th of October. I'd just like to remind people that the evening prior to that, there's going to be a TAHOD working dinner meeting where hopefully the attendees for the TAHOD annual meeting will be present, and we'll have a dinner with perhaps a little bit of discussion of work-related items, but nothing too formal. So on the actual day of the meeting on the 25th of October, and please feel free to interrupt me if you have questions. You don't need to wait for me to finish going through the whole agenda. But we start with registration at 8:45 on Thursday, the 25th of October. In terms of who's going to moderate and chair the meeting, Dr. Fujie will be present, and because Dr. Funtekwa will not be attending the meeting, I'll be chairing or co-chairing in his place. So registration at 8:45, and then following welcome and introductions, we move into the first substantive session of the meeting, which is the study update from Am at the Kirby. We then go to the morning coffee break, following which we have the research concept session. So that's the status of currently approved concepts for TAHOD, APOD and IDEA, plus any new concepts that have been suggested. There's a small grants administration session delivered by Kent from AMPO's office in New York before lunch. And then we have just over an hour for lunch. Following lunch, we go into the specific TAHOD Lite session. So that will be an overview and update of the last round of TAHOD Lite that was conducted in 2017 and some of the associated analysis and concepts that have come out of that. Plus, we will be discussing the next iteration of TAHOD Lite, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in this call, which is the TAHOD Lite hepatitis cascade study. Then we will move into a session that covers the special projects that we have going on under the Adult Network at the moment. So that includes Sanjay's CVD supplemental survey analysis. It includes an update on the TASER 2 study, an update on the new pregnancy outcomes study, the liver cancer case series, and also the depression cross-sectional study. So a mixture of kind of ongoing and recently launched and new planned studies in that special project update. We have a break for coffee break, and then we move into the final main session of the afternoon, which is just looking at key components. So I'm having a look at where we're at in terms of our IDEA 3 grants and research activities, and then just having a broad and general discussion around any additional research priorities and directions. The formal closing of the meeting will happen at just after 4 o'clock, and then there will be the research coordinator session that we used to run concurrently, but will now be sequential and happen after the meeting. So Anne and Danishi will take the research coordinator group for half an hour or so after the formal closing of the meeting. And then the only other point to mention on the agenda is that evening there'll be a joint dinner meeting of the TAHOD and TAPOD networks. So this draft agenda has been shared with you in the materials. If there are any changes, we'll make sure that we update you. But if you do have any comments on the agenda, the contents, or any questions, those comments and questions are welcome now or in emails following this. So I'll open up to any questions if there are any now. Great. Well, the silence I'm going to take as an endorsement of the current agenda.
Hi, Jeremy. It's not a question, but I just saw an email from Manpo saying that he likes to be called in because he can't connect to the meeting as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll try and call him in now. Thanks. So we'll move on next to the agenda item number 4, and that's to give a sub-study update. So these are some of the sub-studies that, again, we'll be covering in the annual network meeting. The first of those sub-studies is TASER 2, so the resistance to second-line antiretroviral therapy study. Just to remind people that this study was actually closed in all our study sites quite some time ago, but the analysis is being delayed somewhat because of missing FASTA files from one of the data contributing sites. I know, Anne, that we've been in contact with that site and have been working to get some of those FASTA files, but perhaps you can give a quick update on where we're at. I know there are a substantial number missing, maybe how many we've got, or what the communications have been with that site. Anne, can you give a quick update?
I don't think there's been any communications, unfortunately. So I don't think we've received any of the FASTA files yet. The 30 files that were sent were actually from the first line failure, so they're not actually part of the study.
Okay. All
So
right.
there's been no communication since then.
All right. Okay. So we will speak to you. So it was Dr. Sarabanan, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe we will speak to you about contacting again and seeing what the latest update is. I think the last communication I saw was a couple of weeks ago, and that said that he's working on it. But I've not heard anything since then. Okay. So I know Kumar's on the call. Kumar, maybe we can speak to you a little bit about this offline as well. But if there's anything that you can do on your end to help kind of coordinate and communicate and facilitate the transfer of these files, then please go ahead. Okay, so the next study update that I wanted to give was around the pregnancy outcomes study. We've shared with you a draft version of the protocol. We're going to bring that up on screen again. Just to remind people, the primary objectives of this study were to investigate the frequency and factors related to fertility after HIV diagnosis among women living with HIV who had initiated ART, and then secondary outcomes were to describe the pregnancy outcomes amongst those women, birth outcomes and associations with ART exposure. The PI for this study is Dr. Junko, who I think is on the call, but if she wants to provide any additional information once I've completed, she's welcome to, but I'll just continue to give some further details and updates on the study. This wasn't a study that we were conducting in every TEHOT site, so the sites that are participating are NCGM in Tokyo, Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Hong Kong, Taipei Veterans General Hospital in Taipei, Beijing Ditan, and Severance Hospital in Seoul. So a study limited to these 5 or 6 TEHOT sites, and we recently finalized a revised version of the protocol. We had to revise the protocol to account for or allow for specific analysis on factors related to fertility after HIV diagnosis. So we revised what was the initial version of the protocol. That revision of the protocol has been circulated to study sites. So please, those study sites, if you've not already done so, please proceed with submitting that protocol to your IRBs. Just a quick reminder of the timeline for that study. We would be hoping to get all the IRB approvals in line and in place, in the last quarter of this year, so we can start with data collection at the end of the year or at the beginning of 2019. Following the submission of the protocols to your IRBs, also Treat Asia will be in contact with the study sites around processing the associated subgrants for those studies. Are there any questions on the pregnancy outcomes study? Okay, so if there are no further questions on that, then I'll move on to the next the new research activity that has been very much under discussion over the past months, and that's the TEHOT Light hepatitis cascade study. So I'm not sure, some of you might remember some of the history of this, but we had been looking at combining 3 suggested studies, or 3 studies that were in our IDEA 3 grant. That was the TEHOT Light, the next round of Tehod Light, the next round of the next round of Tehod Light, the hepatitis cascade of care study, and the hepatocellular carcinoma case series that the Kirby were leading on. After some recent discussions, we've decided that it doesn't make sense to include the liver cancer case series in that study. So what we're going to proceed with is a study that links the next round of Tehod Light with analysis of the viral hepatitis cascade of care. So we would be looking at our HIV positive clinical population through Tehod Light data on hepatitis serology. We would be able to see those that had first of all been tested or that had test results available for hepatitis serology. From that information, we can look at the co-infected population, and then we would be gathering additional data specifically around treatment and treatment response and complications. So there is a study protocol that's under development for this and an associated variable list that comes with that study protocol. And as Asia and Kirby work to finalize that protocol, we will be reaching out to sites and sharing some of the plans and associated data collection for this study with sites, both in email communications, but also particularly, this is going to be a fairly prominent feature at the forthcoming network meeting. So there'll be opportunity to discuss that then. Any questions on Tehod Light hepatitis? Right, so we'll move into the next agenda item, and that's the concepts update. And I'm going to hand over to Dar for that. Thank you.
So I'm going to have a brief outline of where we are in terms of the other active concept in the Tehod and Tehod Light studies. So start with the good news. So Rimcase CVD related mortality manuscript got accepted for publication in the HIV medicine. And in addition to that, we have a total of 18 Tehod concepts are being conducted. So 7 of them are in the stage of manuscript submission. 5 of them are working on the manuscript development, and 2 concepts where the analysis is being conducted, and 2 of them, 2 another concepts that got approved by the steering committee, and we'll start the analysis very soon. And we have 2 concepts that are under pending because we are waiting to, and we plan to revisit the concept once we have enough data. Okay. So I'm not going to go into the detail on each of the concepts, but I would like to highlight on a few things. So the first thing is recently we have 2 abstracts from the Tehod, which is the first one is AM's long-term loss to follow-up, and the second one is Dr. Sanjay and David's cardiovascular screening abstract that we're planning to submit to the PROI conference. So could you please review and send us back the comment? That would be great. Okay. And one last thing that I want to mention here is the slow concept. So which is the BMI at heart initiation that led by Dr. Sunita. So Treat Asia and Kirby are working on it with Dr. Sunita, on getting the draft manuscript ready. So hopefully we will have some update for you in the few weeks. Yeah. Okay. And that's it for the Tehod. And for the Tehod Light, what we have is we have 3 concepts in the pipeline. So the first one is the diabetes mortality that the manuscript was already submitted for the journal, and we have one is under analysis process. And the last one is I just sent out for the work approval this week, 90 targets. So,
Okay. Any questions on any concepts? Okay, thank you. So the next item, or the final substantive item, is a grants and administration update. I think Noel has some specific requests around documents that need to be signed and sent, so I'll hand over to her again.
so this list is from Carrie, our New York office. So there are some outstanding of the KHOT paperwork from some sites. So if you haven't sent back her the site agreement and the completed budget, please do it. And if you need our help to complete it, just let us know. Okay. And the second thing that Carrie wants to remind is, she said that she will be sending you the form to certify to ask and certify about your institution financial conflict of interest. Okay. So she will be sending that out very soon.
All right. So before we close, and please, do take this opportunity to raise any questions, of not just about the aspects of the work that we've covered, but any other questions that you might have. So I'm just going to pause for a bit and let anyone speak up if they have any issues that they want to raise. Okay, well, I'll take the silence on this occasion as a good sign that everything's under control and clear. And thank you for joining the call, and we look forward to seeing all, if not most of you, in Bangkok at the end of October.